How's it going, electricians and engineers? So this is an hour-long conversation. It's kind of like a podcast that I had several months ago with a client who's starting to get into the industry, myself obviously, and also a friend that I've known for many years who's built up a successful business working on smart homes, BMS. Yeah, and I've known him for many years. So I think you'll take a lot of value from this conversation. Hope you enjoy.
I think, there's only going to be a few of us this morning, Brian. I think more people are joining this evening based on what people have messaged me saying. So really, mate, Peter's relatively new, so he's sort of not really been through much of the program yet. So, I mean, if there's firstly, I was just going to ask any feedback. Also, before I forget, thank you for introducing me to June. He came on board last night. Really nice guy.
Did he? Oh, great. Good. I have a couple of questions, just simple ones. You have the control circuit, and do you normally run that over 48 volt or 24 volt?
24 volt usually, yeah.
Say 24 usually. And if you were running that, say, Chris, I'm putting in solar in Ireland, right? And it's a good distance. It's about 60 meters from where I'm going to have the inverter. And I was going to put a few little bits and pieces, like lights and a few things in where the inverter is, to say that certain things below are working correctly. For DC, 24 volt over 60 meters, you would be concerned about a voltage drop, wouldn't you?
It's definitely something to consider. You could do a voltage drop calculation. There should be a volt drop calculator in the resources section, but if you just up the cable size, so
I've done a calculation on it, but I was just interested in just from a real world experience what you probably haven't those distances in factories anyway, do you?
Yeah, I mean, the 60 meters isn't too bad, really. If I'm ever concerned, I'll just up the cable size. If it's ever caught on the edge, I'll just increase the cable size.
Yeah. Okay. Second question I had was you're gone.
Oh, I can still see you and hear you.
Okay, it's just something happened here. Oh no, what the hell is this happening? Cancel. Sorry. If you can see me, I can't see you, but that's fine. No, the stuff is very good. I didn't get as much done this week as I'd hoped, but the material is excellent. So the second question I had was in terms of the size of, when you run your safety circuit and you have, the device which gives you the 24 volts, how big, what size do you make that?
Sorry, mate. Let me just share my screen, and then it might be, that's not the right thing, is it? We can talk through it then. Share screen. Yeah, sorry, go on. What was the question again, Brian?
For your safety circuit, you run it over 24 volts.
Yeah.
And you have a little transformer that produces that. What size transformer generally do you use?
Mate, I just lost that last bit. What transformer do I?
What size transformer do you usually use?
In terms of size, how do you mean? Like
output, like how much output does it need to have?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the transformer, an AC transformer, it's not like a power supply, like a DC power supply where the current output varies based on the spec. AC transformer just transforms voltage, and that's it. There's no. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, well, usually with an AC transformer, there's no bridge rectifier, so you're not rectifying the signal in between from AC to DC. You might have you could have a 3 amp input into a DC isolator, but it could be 10 amp output. So the current would actually be higher than the input.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen, and I can double check this for you, Brian, but I've never seen like a specific current output on a transformer, like on a 230 volt AC to 24 volt AC. I've never seen like a current output. Like the current is, whatever the supply side is really, and whatever is being pulled off the the secondary side. There's not like, I don't think you're limited.
Yeah, there has to be a limitation on the output. You know, if you were looking at something like a PoE, power over internet, if you connect up certain of the little transformers will only give you 0.3 of an amp or 0.5 of an amp or 1 amp. And I was doing one lately and it required 1.5 amps. So you have to buy the transformer, which gives you 1.5 amps. So,
but because it's important to make the distinction between a transformer and a power supply. A power supply is what I refer to like a PSU, where you're going from 20, like for example, 230 volt AC to 24 volt DC. If that's what you're talking about, then yes, you're 100%.
That's what I'm talking about. A PSU, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I was talking about like AC to AC.
Okay, no.
So
the PSU, you know, when you're doing a relatively small little circuit, do the PSUs, I assume, come in different sizes, different outputs, different powers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll spec the transformer. Sorry, confusing things. You'll spec the PSU based on how much power you need. Yeah.
And what would be, you know, your regular? What would be your pretty standard output? Is it 1 amp or 2 amp or?
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking of the Loxon power supplies, Peter. What are they? I know 10 amps quite standard, 6 amps, 4.2 amps.
Yeah, 2.4 amp. I think it's the smallest they do. Or is it the 1.3?
Well, yeah.
Basically, if you were doing a safety circuit, like a safety circuit's no real load on it, so you can get away with the smallest supply unit. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's only all you're doing. You're probably powering maybe a safety relay, and all the rest of it's just traveling through switches and making contact.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I would.
There's no real load on it, like so.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need a massive power supply for doing that function.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
you need a 10 amp for like say LED tape and stuff like that, but you wouldn't need it. Like it would be silly to put it in a panel for control.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I'm just looking at the safety circuit here at the moment because the only thing to kind of be aware of, but I think we're all right here on this safety circuit, is there's not too many, but it's relay coils. They sometimes, you know, if you've got loads of relay coils that could potentially all be on at the same time, they could add up to a certain, you know, that's something to be aware of, you know, if you've got loads of relay coils. But yeah, like Peter said, something like this, you know,
you wouldn't need much.
No.
Yeah, well, my plan this week I'll have time this week. Last week was pretty hectic. I'll have more time to look at it this week. But this stuff is excellent. You know, for someone like me, it's perfect.
Oh, thank you, mate. What is it you're doing?
So what I'm doing is I've just about finished my NVQ. I'm a late entrant to the electrical game. So I do a mix of commercial and domestic. But my plan in the medium term is to get more into the technical end of it, you know, more into the, what do you call them, you know, the building management systems and that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I don't see myself bashing out houses like at my age.
No. Smart move, Brian. You don't want to be doing that if you can help it.
No. I do a lot of repairs and, you know, smaller stuff, you know, and, you know, this is not my first career. And so my plan is I don't plan to retire too early, you know. So my plan is to try and get more into this end of things, you know.
What did you do before?
I was a finance director for nearly 25 years.
Quite a career shift. What's brought you down this path?
Well, I moved to London about 10 years ago. And basically, I took one look at the trains, Chris, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. I used to travel a lot for work. And I said, I'm not doing that. So I started basically multi-trading and carpentry, plumbing, electrics, you know, no gas, obviously. Yeah. And I was doing that for about 6 years. And then I decided I'd get into the electric. So I started about 3 years ago. I did all the electrical exams and then started working with an electrician. And then my own work, somebody would say to you, "Can you do this? Can you do that?" And then, so that's what I've been doing really. I need to finish my NVQ, the 2391, and then the AM2. But the thing is, I'm north of London here. I'm about 25 miles north of London. So the question is, what I have to figure out over time is how do you get in? How do you get in a little bit more into the BMS market? Do you go work for somebody for a while? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and the answer is there's probably quite a few ways you could go about it. I mean, the first and foremost, which is what you're doing, is actually get some understanding and get some understanding in the field, build up your skill set, your knowledge, your understanding, and then it's like So one guy that I'm working with at the moment, he's an electrical contractor based in London. He wants to just ultimately work for someone doing BMS commissioning. And he's willing to sort of take a pay cut. He's fully qualified electrically. He's going through all this training to sort of get the skill set. We're going to tailor his CV over the next week or so to be a bit more suited to BMS. So when recruiters are actually looking, at his CV, they're going to see keywords.
Gotcha.
And it's just I think it's. Then let's say you go down this route, you're looking to get some employment, because he's planning to do that for like a year and a half, maybe progress on to then doing some programming, PLC programming, and then maybe sort of then go back to doing his own thing. But I think it's like once you're getting interest from recruiters in terms of just focusing on this avenue into the industry, like it's quite a small industry, the BMS industry, from my understanding in the UK. It's quite a small knit sort of community. Most people know of each other. And I think once you can sort of talk on, let's say you do get like a phone call with an employer, I think once you can talk on their level, and you can...
You have a better chance.
Yeah, because I think there's actually a massive shortage of engineers generally, like good engineers, and there's an even bigger shortage of BMS engineers from what I've heard in the industry. Like one guy was telling me the other day that he heard like the average age of a BMS engineer is like 55 or something. So, it's not going to be long until these people that have got that experience, been in the industry a long time, are sort of thinking about retirement. So especially like the market, with renewables, trying to make things more intelligently managed, net zero, all of that, it ties into BMS. So I think there's going to be, and there is, increased demand for it. So I don't think employers are going to be able to be that picky. So I think, where people may think, oh, you need X many years experience, I would argue that employers would be flexible, providing they know, what you're talking about, you can communicate on their level. Maybe you start, in a more trainee role. But I was saying to this guy that I'm helping at the moment, like, you negotiate starting at a trainee salary, but then in 3 months' time, make sure that you negotiate that, once you've proven yourself, because it might be a bit of a risk for that employer initially, but you prove yourself, then you up your pay or you up your responsibilities. So that's that route, which is probably the sort of safest route and the best route to go, like in terms of getting that hands-on experience. I mean, from a business perspective, like Peter's been in the game a long time. Peter's come from like a maintenance background, haven't you? And you sort of transitioned into more smart home and BMS. Like you've done hotel BMSs, you're working on projects at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, so started out doing maintenance and PLC programming and all that sort of great stuff. Machinery was sort of my starting point. I started training as an electrical engineer, electrical an electronic engineer and sort of done bits and pieces of the installation work, and then sort of grew from that, and then was made redundant at the factory and went and retrained on the smart home stuff, and then sort of pulled in the BMS as sort of to help another company. Now I do BMS and smart home installations. So sort of the panel I'm going to do today is for an anaerobic digester. So it would be sort of more BMS based, and functionality based around machinery. I've just got a phone call yesterday about energy monitoring on a factory floor, and taking processes from a production standpoint and calculating that into energy information that's being used so that they can put in if they crush 100 turbine blades, where are those 100 turbine blades going to? Where are they going to be? And where's the energy costs from those going to be split up into? So I'm a bit all over the place at the minute with different projects. So
this is the beauty, I think, and this is what I tell everyone, like the beauty of once you sort of understand electrical controls, whether it's from an industrial sector, whether it's sort of smart home automation, whether it's BMS, it's like a transferable skill set across so many different industries and sectors. And like Peter said, it's opportunity to do so many different things. Like you're basically an electrical problem solver, and you can do so much with that. Peter, what was like when you stopped being employed, and was it a slow transition, or did you just go all in your own thing? Did you go straight into smart home projects, or did it take a while to sort of build that up?
At the time that I was made redundant, it was Michelin, so they had actually paid for my training with it was Luxon at the time. Whenever I left there, so I had taken a full-time job, and then I basically built my business from nothing, basically doing smart home projects. Once I left that factory, I started in another factory working permanent night shift, and then during the days and the weekends, then I was doing smart control panels and building a business around it. So I could have been doing 90, 100 hours a week between permanent nights, and then waking up early in the day and getting stuck into getting a smart home panel designed, or building a panel off site, or doing site surveys.
So you were contracting then. So you were sort of doing contracting with your original sort of skill set, maintenance, PLC on the industrial side, were you, whilst building up the smart home side?
So I was employed full time with the other company. So I was with them for 2 years, and then approached by a company that were doing like a smart, what they class as a smart BMS system into a hotel. They basically, I finished early in the night shift and then went down and done a night shift down in the hotel, pulling in cables, getting all the infrastructure in place for the smart BMS. And then the company we were working with, which based in England, basically walked off site when the whole system wasn't working. Then the company that I was sort of doing the sideline work for in the BMS side had then asked me to go and do the training on the product that was being installed. And my first BMS project was 6 weeks on site, permanent, staying in the hotel, basically ripping apart their BMS system and rebuilding it, reconfiguring their process,
But for
That'd
someone
be interesting.
Brian though, who's sort of going to be electrically qualified, like interested to hear your perspective, what would you suggest for someone like Brian to sort of start moving into BMS industry, smart home?
From my perspective, with the BMS industry at the minute, it's very broken. Everybody's trying to sell Honeywell controllers, and there's like 10 different types of Honeywell controllers that can be installed, but just under different names. Like, I believe that I'm more customer centric, and I like to give the customer, so I say the customer, in my head, my customer is the maintenance team in the hotel. So if I can get in and sell a project, I want them to I want to make the maintenance guy's job easier as much as I can possibly do.
Yeah.
Most BMS systems that you walk into in any project that I've walked into, now I surveyed hotels for about 2 years, and every BMS system that I went into was a computer shoved in the corner of the manager's office that was covered in dust. Nobody ever had it turned on. Nobody knew the password for it. Nobody knew how to operate it. Where I'm coming from, I want the maintenance guys to have a tablet in their hand that they can go. This is where if I go to bedroom 204, they walk to bedroom 204 with their tablet. They can do all the testing outside the door without even having to go into the room. And I find then that the maintenance guys appreciate that more. They've less downtime. They've better control of their whole system. So the likes of whenever I was doing the original BMS for one hotel, they were going down and dipping the water for temperature to test the temperature of the water every day. Now they don't do that. The BMS tracks all their information and tells them what the temperature of the pool is, what the temperature of the air in the pool area is, their flow and return temperatures out of the heat exchangers. So they don't need to go and do that job anymore. Moves that they didn't have to do.
And you have a better record of what's going on.
Yes.
So if there is an issue, you can pull something out and say, look, it can't be this because the flow is correct. It must be something else. So
yeah. But getting a good understanding of that, Brian, is what.
Well, I have for my last 10 years in finance, I used to go into companies that were losing money and figure out how to make them make money. So like a lot of what I've been doing, I should have been an engineer, except I did accountancy in the finance route, and I've always been dabbling with building bicycles, repairing stuff. And, for our own end here, I have the Shelley devices doing the monitoring, and we have a place in Ireland now, and we have 4 little units over there. And I have the Shelley devices monitoring the electricity because I'm going to put solar in there in September. And I've got Home Assistant running here. So I've done a little. What I'm doing is doing a bit of stuff myself. I think without doing Chris's course, you're only wasting your time, because you're realistically going to sit in front of somebody and say, well, I want to get into BMS, And it's a bit like, I remember Bart Simpson sticking a pencil into the butter and saying, I want to get into the internet, you're just not credible,
Yeah.
I think touching on both of you guys said, that's partly what a BMS is all about. It's like saving a business money by intelligently managing expensive things like utilities, electricity, tying renewables into it. But like Peter was saying, it's making it's monitoring and being aware of things happening within the building, certainly commercial buildings. So when a pump fails, and it should then automatically change over to the standby pump, engineers, the maintenance team, like Peter was talking about, should get a notification straight away, know exactly where to go, and it should all be easily accessible through a notification on their phone, email, on the front of the panel as well. So it's just about, I think, for me, BMS, it's like saving businesses money, which if you can do that, it's an easy sell. It's an easier sell than trying to sell smart homes, I think. I think there's the market's much smaller for smart homes, especially high-end smart homes. So I think BMS is a great opportunity, saving businesses money and making the lives of the people maintaining the building as easy as you possibly can. And I've seen so many shitty BMSs as well, where you go into a site and are you familiar with the hand auto switches, Brian? Now from going,
yeah,
where everything's set in hand, so everything's set in the manual override setting because the system hasn't been commissioned properly, hasn't been programmed properly, hasn't been optimized. So these companies think that they've just spent X amount of money on a BMS that's meant to save them money, and it's just been left in hand. It's not optimized. And I see this time and time again. Like me and Peter have talked about this other times. It's it's criminal, really. so there is gaps in the market, but it just takes a while first to sort of build up the skill set, the knowledge, the understanding, so you can start firstly having the confidence to sort of go into places and talk to people, you know, and also start generating interest and business. You need to be able to talk at that level and understand it first.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff I've been doing around here has been, I'd say a good 30% is where someone else has gone in, hasn't been able to fix it. And then they ring you and say, would you ever be able to look at this? And you go in, you figure out. So it's just about, but without the basic building blocks, which are here, you know, it's a bit like somebody saying to me, I want to do finance, and say, well, okay, well, how does the ledger work? And they look at you and you go, what ledger? And you're kind of going, well, you know, you have to figure out the basics first before you do more, you know.
Yeah. And this is the thing, people just want to dive straight into like PLC programming because they think it's glamorous and they can just whip out a laptop and get paid good money, but they don't understand all the things that sort of come before the programming or what underpins the programming. So it's like you can't you're trying to, you know, drive a car before you can even crawl. You know.
Well, one of the things when we're doing the training, I did my training with trade skills, and you know, I know a lot of the electricians knock it, but actually it's pretty comprehensive. And if you, like, I worked with an electrician here now down in London in hotels and stuff, you need to do that. But one of the things that a guy said to me is, he said, the electricians can be good if you have a technical mind, the electricians can be good with, because they know how to actually trace back the wire to exactly, you know, and how to test it and how to see which wire does what, and if there's an issue, you know, how to do the insulation resistance testing or continuity, etc., etc. So a lot of the fellas that program the PLCs, they're not able to do that side of it, you know. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's there's a lot to it actually. When I looked at your packs there, I went, "Ooh, there's a bit." I mean, there is a lot to it, but you know, that's how you make a few bob, I suppose. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and you know, it's if you can understand the whole process, you know, then you can, you know, rather than just the PLC programming or just the cable installation, you understand the whole process, then you can deliver professional systems all on your own. Basically, you might sub out, you know, some installation and stuff, but you know, you can deliver like professional projects from start to finish with full confidence, you know, and reap the benefits and get a big chunk of the project pie for doing that. And it gives you that variety as well. You know, you're not just pulling cables day in, day out. You might be doing some specifying on site, then you might be doing some documentation, then you're doing some panel building, testing, commissioning. You know, it's for me anyway. I love that, being able to see the project throughout from the start, you know, all the way through to the finish, and it gives you that variety. Never bored, always something to learn.
Yeah. No, it's good. I'm glad John joined up, because I think John is. I think he'll benefit hugely from it as well, because he's a good old chap, that lad.
Yeah, he seems it. Like, and he's working for contracting for Morrison's, and he was telling me like all these Morrison stores, they have a BMS in it, but none of these, like, if there's a little, he was telling me about a little problem, but like all the guys, you know, they don't, it's probably quite a simple problem from what he was talking about, because they don't know how to sort of break it down. It's, you know, they can't solve the problem. But imagine if you could just break things down, realize it's, you know, just something stupid, because it normally is, fix that, you know, the site manager knows that you're capable, then, you know, the next time he's going to bring you back in, like, because you get a trend engineer in, they're like, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but they're, you know, a trend engineer, they charge themselves out at like 600 to 800 quid a day. You know, if you can do that at half the price, that's still good money.
Or if you could do it at 600 quid a day.
What's that?
If you could do it at the same price, but do it better.
Well, yeah, as long as you don't have to do any programming, because you need like trend license and stuff. But the programming is usually set. But just think, like, if he can solve like one issue at one site, and there's a site manager managing various different sites, like that's how you kind of then build up a name for yourself. You're capable of doing it. You then get invited to do other things at other places, and it just sort of builds and snowballs from there.
I agree. I mean, once people have a problem, if there's no problem, there's no work. But once people have a problem or something a need, and they know somebody, and the need is bad enough, and they know somebody can solve the need, then you'll be in work. They'll say, "Oh, I'm fed up with this thing. Who can fix this for me?" And then if you're the guy that can fix a lot of these things in somewhere like Morrison's, well, then you're going to be busy,
Yeah. Or even identifying problems, bringing potential problems to people's attention, that's another sort of sales tactic, I suppose, making people aware of issues that perhaps they're not.
Because what's interesting is it's going to be, I think it's the same here, but certainly in Ireland, we never had, up to maybe 6-7 years ago, you could always get people. Now the problem is you can't get people. So automation before you had a cost benefit of automation, but now it's not the cost benefit, it's the fact that you just can't get anyone to do it. So sometimes you've got to do more automation simply because without that you can't get people, and if you do get them, they are really expensive because there's full employment. And I think over here there may not be full employment, but trying to get people, I'd say, is tricky enough,
What, in your experience then, what have you tried to do then in the past where you've struggled to get people?
Well, across the board, getting good. In Ireland, for example, getting anybody is difficult. Getting an electrician, getting a plumber, getting anybody like that is nearly impossible. Over here, it's more readily available, but trying to get any young fellas to do it, it's very difficult. So I think you're right. I think there's going to be a shortage of people who can do some of this type of work, and increasingly, because outside of yourself, Chris, I don't know anyone who's running these types of courses. Yeah,
I mean, they're just trying to bring in like one place near Gloucester. This is something that Zach at Smart Home has mentioned to me, Peter, but they're trying to start like a smart home and apprenticeship at college, but the syllabus isn't really good enough. There's a couple of places like colleges or like in-person trainings, like KNX, they do a panel building course, but it's not really, it's a consumer unit basically. It's putting together a consumer unit.
Yeah.
So yeah, mate, I mean, this is the thing. I struggled because there was nothing available, certainly nothing available online. So that's kind of where it's all stemmed from, really.
Yeah. And I'm not knocking smart homes, but the problem I see with smart homes a lot of the time is that, I mean, a friend of my wife used to look after a very wealthy Saudi lady down in London, and the apartment had like megabucks of gear in there, like a lot of money. It's all obsolete now. So that becomes the problem. The day you put in, and I mean, really, am I going to go to my phone to turn the light on? I'd probably walk to the switch. It's probably easier for me. Now, will I like to turn certain, like air conditioning on when the solar panels are kicking out enough juice, then I'll turn the air conditioning on automatically and turn heaters on automatically? Absolutely. So I suppose the danger is with the smart homes, it changes so quickly as well that how do you keep up to date,
So like I'll jump in there on the smart home stuff. So because I install it day and day, it's like you're saying there, would it turn on my lights with my phone? No, you wouldn't, because you would have PIR sensors in a room that would turn on the lights and turn them off automatically. Things like that, they're just energy saving solution. So I'm the type of person that would install a smart home based on is it going to be there in 10 years' time? And the products I use I expect them to fully be there in 10 years' time, as much as I can potentially do. I'm going to houses now and retrofitting into houses that are 17 years old. They've had a smart home in for 17 years. But yes, the products are no longer there, but there's replacement products for those. It's not like it's just completely gone. But if you're building a £250,000 house or £500,000 house or £1 million house, you're needing the likes of those controls, because your house will not operate properly with just standard controls, because your temperature will be up and down, because people have dials on the wall to do that. You don't have stability in the house. You don't have I put in heating systems, and the heating systems are a constant temperature, very, very minimal usage of excess heat from other sources. South-facing windows are an absolute nightmare in Ireland, because big glass panels, they're just big, massive radiators. How do you cool a room like that? I have a customer there, and he's a 12,500 square foot house, and he says to me, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to put in smart controls because I can't afford it." And I've said to him, "Well, the worst thing you can do is take these out, because his house has glazing south, southeast, and west, all glazed in one room, and the panes of glass are 12 foot tall."
Lovely. How do you call that?
Greenhouse.
A greenhouse, yeah. Yeah.
And he was, in his opinion, he was going to put a temperature sensor on the wall, which was going to open ventilation windows to let the heat out. And I says, but by the time that temperature gets too warm, it's too late, because the sun's already hitting the glass. Because once it hits the glass, the room's heating like an oven. He needs to be shutting his curtains before the sun hits glass. He needs to be actively cooling that room before there's any sun ever gets into it. But in his opinion, it's just overkill for what he needs. And I'm like, the house is going to cost him maybe 3-4 million, and he's not willing to spend 300,000 on proper controls. You're just how do you win that?
Well, if it's the commercial one, appeals more to me, because I personally don't want a PIR in my house. Outside lights, yes, but I don't be walking into rooms and like Maxwell Smart, the lights are coming on. But certainly in offices, and there's more potential for a revenue stream in an office, because as you say, your man says to you, I don't want to spend money. Whereas in the office building, they're going to have an EICR done. They're going to have maintenance done. They're going to have, so it's, and if you ever, not really in my plan, but if you ever had a little business and you have more potential to sell it then, because you have a revenue stream, or you have customers, but yeah. No, it's interesting listening to you there, Peter, because you've kind of given me a few things I hadn't thought of, to be honest with you.
Right. And there's in my opinion, I hate getting into, say, everybody does kitchen, dining, living room areas in buildings, but a traditional control system, you would have 12, you could have up to 12 switches on a wall.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that. I have one switch. Yeah. So I like to have one switch in the kitchen, maybe a switch that you can see and a hidden switch, and then set everything up in scenes. It's the only way to do a room of that size and that layout is to do with the smart control. If that was the only room in the house to do with smart controls, that would be the perfect one for me every time that I would go in, and I can give you a real nice system just to control this room.
Yeah. But you're talking about heating controls, which that's an interesting one, because a customer of mine bought a house lately. She paid probably $1.6 million for the house, refurbed it. I said to her, "What are you going to do with the, how are you going to control the heating?" Never even thought of it. And I'm saying, well, you work from home 2 days a week. you know, when you do the extension, because you're going to have underfloor heating, how are you going to control that? Never thought of that. And like, ultimately, I mean, we have a big room in Ireland that flows along the back of the house, and it looks out to it looks out to sea. It's got very open. And we have the exact same problem in the summer. I mean, you need sunglasses to watch the television in there, and the heat in there in the summer is unreal. Now we do holiday rents there, but you know that you're right about the sun coming in. Like, I mean, you grow great tomatoes there in the summer, you know.
Yeah. And are you on the west coast then in Ireland?
We are on the east coast, Wexford.
Wexford, yeah.
Yeah, we're on the east coast there. It's going to be fantastic for solar.
Yeah. So I'm in the east coast as well, but in the north. So I'm a town called Glenarm, or a village.
Where's that near?
Just outside Larne.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're the Glens of Antrim. So we're the first Glen in Antrim. So
very nice. Very nice part of the world up there.
But I end up spending most of my time in Galway and Limerick and heading to Edinburgh today. So I'm all over the show. But I actually look after hotels. Like I look after a hotel called the Knightsbrook Hotel in Trim, 20 Meath. And like they were the ones that were sort of left with the crap BEMS system. And now I'm their basically they pay me a maintenance contract to look after the whole hotel, because I'm the only one who knows the whole hotel inside out. That's
a great business model.
Yeah, and that's reliable. That's sort of the route.
It's a reliable income stream, you know.
It is, yeah.
100%. Like I've only 3 maintenance contracts set up. One for Knightsbrook, one for Nissan in Dublin, down City West, in the M50, and then I've Salvation Army. So they're the 3 sort of companies that are paying me a monthly every, you know. So
that's a good model. I like that.
Yeah. So I need to build on that, but my problem is I sort of built a new office and warehouse last year and spent a lot of money on it. I need to get it up and going and get office staff and stuff like that all working in the office and get somebody to do all the drawings for me, and then I'll build a panel with it.
Yeah.
Because I hate computer work. That's the big thing.
I got to run here, but let me share this one with you and to get you thinking. We had an issue below in Wexford with the planning. We needed to do planning, right? So went into the architect down there. He drew up the plans. He applied for the planning, and no, we didn't get it. No planning permission, and so we needed new plans. So I went back to your man, says these plans, they were slightly wrong. These plans are wrong. We need, you know, it'll be 8 weeks and $2,000. And I went, oh, Jesus, you know. So I went to this upscale online and I found an architect in Croatia, and I gave him the PDFs. He drew all the plans for me. We did Zoom calls on it, and I submitted the plans myself, and we got the planning. And it cost me 380 quid.
Nice.
So we were doing an extension here, a small little extension here, sent him the plans, and he's very professional, like he's a proper architect. English is excellent. Went through it again, submitted another 300 quid, got the planning. I've given them to an Irish builder friend of mine. He's using them now to do houses. So you'll be amazed when you're talking about getting panels and stuff drawn up. If you find the right fella over there or somewhere, you'd be amazed what you can get for a fraction of the price, you know.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go on.
No, that's it. Sorry.
Do you have to shoot, Brian?
Yeah, I've got to shoot because we're heading this afternoon. Chris and Peter, thank you very much for the time. It's very, very, very well worth it. Appreciate it.
It's good to have a good old chat.
All right. Thanks a lot. See you.
Bye. Cheers, Brian. Cheers.
You
stay for a sec.
Yeah.
Two things, mate. Just following on from what Brian said. So the video editor I use for like the content that I do is by a guy in the Philippines, TJ, that works for me full time. Who there's a really good website where you can find lots of sort of remote workers. And that's just sparked my memory that a guy that I know who's an electrical engineer, I told him about this website and I told him about TJ who does my video editing, and he went and checked out because he exactly the same as you. He spends half, well, not exactly the same as you, but in a similar situation to you, where he's an electrical contractor, gets loads of work in, and then he wants to spend his whole time riding motorbikes and fixing motorbikes if he can. So he wanted to get like a design engineer in to sort of like do all the documentation and CAD stuff. I told him about this website, which I can pass on to you, and he found someone in the Philippines, electrical design engineer, who now does pretty much all of his design work and documentation work.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, you know, you're paying a third of the price as you would over here, maybe more. You know, like Brian mentioned, like $2,000 down to 350 quid.
Yeah, and I think that's even your guy Ben and Smart Homie, you know, the Facebook group. He's the exact same. So he's a company in the Philippines, and they're employed full time through him, and they do all their cinema room designs.
Yeah.
And all the 3D renders and stuff for the cinema rooms. So he actually doesn't do any of it himself.
There we go. Yeah. So I'll pass on that website to you. The other thing, I was going to message you, but as you're here, brilliant. I don't know whether you know, but a guy that used to work at Loxon, Czech guy, he used to be the MD of the Czech subsidiary. Then he was the sort of MD of the US, and his name was pronounced something like Pavel or something. Anyway, doesn't really matter. He reached out to me yesterday. He's no longer working at Loxon, and he's doing, basically he's got a social media / digital marketing agency, and he was reaching out to me to basically run some ads for me because he's got this agency. He's running ads for already a company in the UK, and they're generating, you know, qualified leads for projects. He's got a few clients in the US, and he's now trying to sort of break into the UK market a bit more. So he was wondering whether sort of I'd be interested in him helping me, you know, perhaps a reduced rate on the agreement that, you know, I give him a use case or a testimonial review, that kind of thing. And I said, well, because I'm not focusing specifically on project work at the moment, but I know a couple of people that might be interested in that. So I passed on yours and Zach's name to him. So just a heads up, you might get him reaching out to you at some point.
Get a random phone call.
Sorry, mate?
Might get a random phone call.
Yeah, you might do, or an email.
Yeah, no, that's dead on. The problem is for me, like the marketing's not really my, like, I don't know. I never really look at the way other people do, because a lot of my work is word of mouth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
but like he's like one example. He's got one client, UK based, I think he's an AV client actually, and he's basically just running targeted ads. He does it all for you. He's running targeted ads for this company, I think targeting the home counties and London. But what made me think is, like, if you're going here, there and everywhere, it might be helpful if he, you know, helped you generate more leads, business, you know, nearer to you, so you're not having to travel so much, perhaps.
Yeah, my big issue is that with me at the minute, the reason I'm traveling is because I'm friendly with a consultant in the south of Ireland.
Right.
So he's the guy that's sort of getting me the work down south, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This job over here in England, Scotland, is from word of mouth again. But this could be like a repetitive thing, you know. So we get to end up doing these all the time. But it would be I'd be producing the same panel over and over and over again, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now there might be stages where it's like a panel that's like a base panel, and then there's like a base panel, a mid panel, and then a like super high end panel. But it'll all be the same setup. So it's probably I'll design it for the best, and then sort of strip back to what is like what they paid for, really.
23.
I know what you mean. You sort of have have like the high end base model and then just tailor it back from that, and like you can just all in your design and documentation, you can just remove bits. It's nice and easy. It's already done. You just remove bits from the high end base model, and your design and documentation is done.
Yeah, and that's where I'm sort of dealing with that at the minute. Like I'm going to Edinburgh here once I've basically this panel built, all the drawings and stuff done for it. I'm planning to just rinse and repeat for the remainder of the panels. But they're quite big panels, quite lucrative as well, So they could be 25 grand just to do a panel.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So if you can streamline that whole process.
Sorry, somebody tried to ring me.
Anyway, mate, I've got to shoot anyway, bud. But let me know if you want to go through like the schematics of that project. We can spend an hour on Zoom or something.
Yep, no problem.
All right, bud. Good to speak to you, Peter. Good to see you.
You too, Chris.
Take it easy, bud. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.